Hey everyone, welcome to ArtCo Afternoon Arts. Thank you for joining me. My name's Amber. I'm the artistic director / cat herder. Sorry we don't have Doobs with us today. I'm kind of on a little lake kind of vacation, so we're doing a little remote class out and about, and we don't have Doobs out with us, so it's just going to be you and me today, and we're working on our art journaling. This is where we're using mixed media, and we're pulling a little bit of art therapy and creativity into the things that we might be dealing with or things that we want to, kind of play around with. And so we've got some really great kind of examples of things that we played with the past couple times. We talked about missing our colleagues and missing the things like live music, and I like teaching and mentoring. That's my jam. So I've got all that stuff in there. And we talk about giving ourselves more compassion. So today we're going to talk about our inner critics and talk about those little things that we have that go on in our brain that say you can't do this, or things aren't working out, or you can't think light enough on your feet or be resilient, or you said something that was dumb and you thought people were laughing at you. Like, who cares? So these inner critics are things that can keep us from moving forward and being resilient and working on stuff. So being able to play around with this is a really fun way in order to pull these concepts into our creative thinking so that we can practice on stretching that part of the brain with, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my stream over here where I can see it, getting that part of the brain on there working so that we can use that creative thinking when we're working through these issues and when we're thinking about these things, these inner critics. We can use this kind of thinking. So we're going to play around with this. And I just brought some watercolor we're going to be playing around with. I've got a bunch of little, kind of materials that I need. So thinking about my inner critic, I also want to think that I also want to trust myself when I think about this inner critic, part of this exercise. So I want to have one side where I'm kind of trusting myself, and then another side talking about all these inner critic things that I might be saying to myself. So maybe this is a two kind of sided project. I'm going to pop you down. So maybe we'll use two sides of the book. But I think I just want to do another, how we did with our past project, like this one where we could flip up the face, but I think I'm actually going to finish it this time. So I think we're going to skip this page and we're going to use this one. Aha! So I can create a whole nother page here. And I think that this will be a really fun way for me to play with it. So maybe I think I first want to designate like my outside edge for whatever it is that I want to put on here. And so maybe I just want to do like a super simple, like, cartoon, not cartoonish, but a super simple, just like line drawing representation of this. I think I'm going to pop this down, that way you can see, with pencil marks. And I'm just going to use a pencil, and I'm just going to sketch in kind of an idea of an image here. And I want it to take up a good amount. So like maybe, I don't know, I'll do a little spot for a head. I hope you guys are having a good time. Hey Bill, hey Linda, happy you guys are hanging out and enjoying this creative time. I think I like this. And we'll do like a little big bun here. Oh yeah, I like this. This is turning out alright. And I'm going to give it a... give her a nice necklace. Okay, maybe I'll make it less fat. There. Okay, I can always erase stuff out as well. Okay, so I'm going to play around with this, and we're going to get some of these lines in, and just play with getting our drawing in. Let me see if I can see what Bill was saying. Another venue, better Wi-Fi. Do I have a better connection here? Oh, yay. Well, it is pretty darn good Wi-Fi here. I will say that. So I'm going to go ahead and just start getting some of my line work in here. Maybe I'll go in. And I don't want to spend too long on this because, you know, this is the part where I'm trying to make more sense. And I'm just going to get the line in for her. And I'm just going to get these shapes built in. Oh yeah, that builds a really cool kind of, oh can you see? A really cool kind of bun. And we'll have that kind of come around. Oh yeah, this is building out into a fun little shape here. I'm going to build this. See how I give a little nuance on the line? You know, that's enough. I don't want it to go all the way off the paper, but just a good amount. And, you know, I'm not making it super straight. I'm giving it a bit of a curvature because it's a real, you know, person, gal. And so, look, I give these little hints. We'll build more line work here. Remember, this is my waterproof pen. And so we can build this idea of hair that's kind of, you know, wrapping around. Right? Super fun. And so just kind of playing and getting some kind of specific lines in there. Again, I'm not really too terribly worried about like getting a ton of stuff in here. And then I just want to like get in because I want to, you know, we'll just and I'm just going to get some nice little boxes around these guys. That'll be kind of fun. So that'll give me something that I can play around with for a boundary line on my other piece. So I'm actually going to take this little gal and I'm going to cut her out completely. And I'm just going to start from the bottom and go up. And I'm not going to hug my line, but what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut it away so I leave a little bit of white space around it, you know, kind of like a sticker would look. I haven't really erased any of my pencil lines out of here yet, and that's okay. Remember, I don't want to spend a crap ton of time on her, and maybe I'll leave some of those pencil lines in here to remind me about the imaginative process and that it can be messy, you know, the planning, you know, the brainstorm, there's beauty in that chaos. Alright, because that's where a lot of that, you know, that experimentation, well, that then, you know, derives a lot of really cool things. So now I got this really cool cutout. So I can play around with this on my paper. And as a matter of fact, I want to know where she's going to be. So I'm actually going to kind of set her right in the center. And I'm super lightly just going to trace her out. And so now I'm going to think about like the basis of my inner critic and what my inner critic actually is. And you know, I don't think I want to do anything that's like this face of a monster or anything, but I really think I just want to do a bunch of like speaking bubbles. So maybe what I'll do somewhere in the center here is I'll do a set of lips here. I'm gonna get a good amount of, I want to make it fairly large, but I'm gonna have to be able to erase these guys out, and I'm gonna use some watercolor for this. And I'm going to get some teeth in. Oh, I'm going to draw these guys. I'm going to draw the teeth in with my pencil here. But I'm not going to, as a matter of fact, I'm just going to dot these guys in. Instead of drawing, I'm just going to dot, but I am because my inner critic's kind of like this. And so I'm going to get the rest of this boundary where my lips would end, because all this is going to be black. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to brush this in so I can fill this in super quick. And remember, I can watercolor because this is permanent. Don't do this if you're not working with permanent ink. Remember, I'm thinking about my inner critic and what I'm going to want to write down. This is one of these ones where we're working with our, you know, we got to rethink the idea of therapy. It's really more just, it's kind of like dating oneself and emotional intelligence and getting to know oneself. And so as we work these concepts out and play with them, it helps us get to know ourselves a little bit better. Now, I am getting to the point that I want to work with my watercolor, so I'm actually going to pre-wet a lot of my little palettes here, and since they're super dry, I can run my brush against them and not worry about it terribly ruining them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get some of this bright orange going, because I want to go in here and get a good amount going for my lips, a beginning. Ooh, my black wasn't totally dry yet. But look at that. You see how I kind of pull some of that off? Actually, that looks pretty darn neat. Pretty darn neat. Okay, I'm going to go in. Maybe that wasn't a waterproof pen that I just used. Oh, this is looking cool though, guys. I'm happy. Okay, so I'm going in, I'm getting my lips infused with some color here. This is going to be my inner critic. And so now I'm going to hit it with a darker red, just on the bottom sides, just so I can give it a really nice, I don't know, a really nice kind of shadow. I think that's fun. Yeah, super simple. I'm not doing anything really beyond that, because we want to make sure we've got enough time in order to fit in our actual kind of our bright red things. So now I'm going to start working on just some really fun kind of little word bubbles. And I really just want these to be some nice solid color. And these will be ones that we can go back and then we can write on top of them. So I'm cleaning out my brush in between so that I can create these really great, bold, bright bubbles. And what will look really, really neat with these for our inner critic is we'll create this really fun kind of interactive with these bright colors coming out from behind ourselves. Right, you can mod this and turn this into a guy or gal. I kind of like the difference between the gray and then, you know, because sometimes the inner critic can get super bold and loud and in our face, and, you know, we want to make sure we have that calmness and that trust in ourselves. I hope everyone's having a good Tuesday and that you're finding things amidst the where my lady, where I'm going to have pieces that extend beyond. So I just want to make sure I get these filled out with color. This creates a really fun dynamic, and I like the kinetic pieces. I like in my journals to do pieces that are interactive. It's the unique time really where we're able to do this kind of work in our journals. You know, you can even research and play around. I think we may end up doing a pop-up design. I have this really cool old pop-up book, and it was a replica of one that was made in the, I don't know, the 1800s or something. You know, I'm going to have this one originate inside the lips. Now that the lips are kind of dry, let me give it a nice point. Oh, this is going to be fun. So I'm loading it up with a good amount of pigment. You know, I'm just kind of bouncing all over the place again as I get this. Look at this great pop of color that's going to kind of, boom, come up from behind her. I really think this is a fun dynamic way to kind of play around with our idea of this inner critic. Ooh, we've got a nice violet here. Make sure that I don't know where I want to put this one. You know, I'm thinking, well, there we go. Oh, this is gonna, oops, I just knocked my gal in the trash. Put her right here. And so I'm working on getting the rest of my color in here. And notice I'm going out past where my line is again. I want to make sure that I'm extending past there. I think I am going to do a little brown one here. This makes for, again, a really fun kind of dual exercise, playing around with our colors, playing around with our nice, serene, dealing with letting our trust for our imaginative and our creative thinking process to come through. That's kind of why I like this rough. And I don't think I'm going to add any more detailing on her because, again, this is a nice representation of that rough, that imaginative process. And, you know, we don't really add a face onto our inner critic because that's different for every person. And so if we leave this, it's just kind of universal, and sometimes our faces for our critics can change as we're older. And so we want to make sure that we're always our own cheerleaders. We'll always do better if we're on our team than if we're not on our own teams. So we always want to make sure we're working for that. Okay, I'm going to get some more. That's a nice deep red here. Actually, I'm going to get that one here, I think. Get a nice, I want really nice realistic curves, nothing that feels too terribly forced. And see how many different, I was able to use all the colors on my palette here. Oh, there we go. I think I'm going to hit another like version of a yellow over here. I've got this one right here I don't think I've used yet. There we go. That's a nice bold yellow. We needed that to kind of balance over there. I might do, this is more of a khaki color, but I think I'm going to put that in there, actually. Get a nice curve going here. Oh, that's a really nice push right in there. So we've got this really fun idea again where we're working on both. So I'm going to want this thing to dry, and I'm going to start thinking about all these little inner critic things that I might want to write in here. I don't think I'm going to do much else on this. Let's see. We want this thing to dry. I'm going to actually set my watercolor off to the side, and I'm going to start thinking about some of the things that I might want to write around, etc. of my piece. So there's a lot of different ways that we can fill the spaces as well. As a matter of fact, I'm going to grab some of my little pens here. And I kind of want something that's in between, because sometimes, you know, we want to make sure that we're remembering to patterning. So I'm just throwing little hearts in here. I'm just filling up space with shapes. You know, and I can draw around some of these if I wanted to, and we can, you know, add more detailing. This guy, I'm going to do little polka dots all the way around. So I'm just kind of going in and adding some details to these as I see the ones that are dry enough for me to do that with. You know, like this one is dry enough. And you notice I'm just kind of turning my journal around. Yeah, so we can go around, play around with all these as we're thinking about the things that we might want to fill out in them. And so, like, you know, I can echo some of this stuff up here as well. So we're just kind of playing around and getting some detailing done in here. Again, we're trying to work really light on our feet. Kind of the point of these is that we really want to do this kind of automatic detailing and drawing because we want to play around with letting our the right side of our brain, letting the right side of our brain do its thing, which is that thing of creativity. So if we are able to get ourselves to think and analyze, yes, and just get in that motion of freely creating, you know, you remember being like 5 or 6 or in kindergarten and just sitting down and just making things, no stress, right? And so that's what this journaling really is supposed to be. You're supposed to have like a bit of less of a feeling of stress there, and you know, just playing around and creating and feeling less stressful as you're thinking about the things while you're creating, which is really the basis of art therapy, is that we create as we're thinking about these things, and it helps pull down the amount of stress, you know, that we may feel as we think about them. And so I'm just going in, adding more detailing. I'm just throwing a bunch of hearts on here. I mean, we should all love ourselves. That's how we love others, right? You gotta love yourself first. And so I just figured I'd throw a bunch of hearts as a nice little reminder that, you know, my inner critic's not going to be really nice, so I just wanted to fill kind of the air around the other little stuff. And so, you know, I can go in and start thinking about the things that, you know, I might say to myself if, you know, I'm, you know, my inner critic. I can say, like, I don't make enough stuff. I don't either. I've had such a long desert of making things that, you know, I do need to get into making more stuff. But it's just been one of the things. I hate laundry. I'm the worst. At ironing. Not my favorite task, right? And so we're using this in order to fill out all of our inner critic stuff. And so these are things that, you know, maybe we're not as terrible. Maybe I'm not as terrible. I'm really not terrible at ironing. I'm actually really good. I was in the Army for 7 years, so I had to iron my uniforms, etc. for a long time. I was in the time when we, you know, did our shoes, so I want to make sure that I'm, you know, being nice to myself. So I'm going to make sure that this gal, I want her attached on here, and I want her attached on here so I can flip her down. That makes the most sense because I've got a flat edge here. And so I'm actually going to create a nice little fold here. That way there's a folding point, and it's nice and flat. So I'm going to get this nice and folded, and I'm going to use my fingernail to kind of push along it. That way I have a nice kind of flat fold. And I'm going to fold in the opposite direction as well, just so now I have a good hinge point here, and the paper freely hinges without any terrible issues. Now I'm going to want to glue this, but I want to make sure I do not get the glue on this part, but that I'm only getting it on this part where it's going to attach. That way it doesn't get in the way of my paper hinging down. So I'm actually going to use a glue stick for this. I brought my glue stick with me. And I'm going to keep this paper hinged down, and I'm going to glue it this way. See, I can kind of line it up against my finger. and then I can glue it this way. Yeah, good amount of glue, not like globbed on there. I'm going to get my lid back on here. Remember, make sure you're working if you're on tables. Be careful, be aware. And then I'm going to get her just set right here on the bottom edge of the paper and get this nice and pushed on. So what's really cool is that we've got this really fun, oops, I didn't make sure it was glued on first before I did that. So we've got this really great flip here for our interactive journal. It creates a really fun kinetic kind of page. I really like the interactive pages. I don't know, for me it brings me back to being a kiddo in art class, and it brings me back to things like flip books, etc. And it's important that we interact with ourselves. We do so much to interact with the outside world. Our journals are our ways to make our own selves exciting and interesting. So as we're thinking about all these concepts, as we create these interactive pages, you know, it makes it seat more. And we're pretty fun, you know. So I like getting back to flip books. They're always intriguing to me as a kid. And look at that. That's even a really fun kind of looking dynamic art piece, which these journals can turn into really fun representations and influences for final and for art pieces. So I really enjoyed that. I think that was super fun. Bill says you make great stuff every day in art class. Well, that makes me really happy. I always have a lot of fun with you guys. Make sure that you're going in, you're playing with all of your bubbles, and that you're filling in all of your inner critic things in there. Those are things that are deeply personal. I don't always fill in everything in these classes that we're putting on here publicly, because I also use this ArtCo journal that I make with you guys. I go back in here sometimes and I'll fill in stuff as well for myself. So these are really fun, true things that I'm doing for myself as well. And so these are really, again, fun ways to play around with new techniques, new ways to make things, and new ways to explore ourselves. We don't necessarily get educated in how to get to know ourselves better. So this is a really fun way to do that. And again, we don't get really educated in stretching out the right side of our brain, the creative side, especially when it comes to having it do that crosstalk and that crossover into the practical things in our lives, which would be, you know, our own mental health, or our how we deal with stress, or how we're resilient. Creativity is important in that. Bill says, thank you for another great class. You're our art oasis in our daily desert. That makes me very happy. Thank you guys so much. Look, I'm wearing my DD214. Any of you veterans out there, thank you so much for your service. For those of you that don't know, I used to work in the Army and I did tech. Wildly different from, well, I mean, not wildly different. People are lots of data. It's just you're not computers, you're people. Way more fun. Biological computers, anyway, that is. But anyway, thank you guys very much. I'll catch you again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Tomorrow's our Wacky Wednesday. We'll have a really fun little class lined up for you tomorrow. And I will see you next time.